Whoa, 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 whoa. Up, folks. It's been a while. I think it's been a little over a week. I've been podcasting at least a couple times a week at this point, but I am freaking stoked to be here. I say this with all of my heart. I love doing this, and it's cool because I get to learn and grow because Adam 100% is smarter than I am. I know that already. But man, a couple housekeeping items before we get going. One, 2024 has been amazing. Mikey G NFT using that brand as the web-facing, Web3 front-facing brand has worked out really, really well already. Working on maybe leading some spaces in addition to doing this podcast, networking incredibly. Maddie is still alive. I promise you that. He has gotten a new job. His days are really packed. He's also doing real estate on the side, but he's not giving up midlife crisis. We are going to continue to go. If you look at our YouTube's actually growing a little bit. Mikey G NFT Twitter is growing. So we're working hard and we're not giving up. We told you we wouldn't 3 years ago, and we're still here and we're happy to be here. So those are the housekeeping items. But before I introduce formally Adam, welcome to the show, man. How you doing? How you feeling right now?
Yeah, really good. Thank you for having me on. Feeling amazing. It's the morning here in Australia, and to everybody else around the world, hello.
Right. No, I love it, Dan. Thanks for being here, man. It is 2:45 here in California. So that's another thing I love. I get to talk to people all over the world. Who in the world would I thought I would be talking to an insurance expert for Web3 across the freaking world? 3 years ago, I would have told you you're absolutely crazy. And we have people watching us online. Like, that's insane. I don't even know how this exists, but I love the reality. Vincent, thanks for the Adam shout out. We're excited. So we're going to get off starting before we get to the world famous midlife crisis question. I'm going to go a little bit through the resume. Adam, feel free to add stuff after I go through it. A lot of really interesting stuff. So he's got an education in cybersecurity, behavioral science, and psychology. Has certifications in blockchain security and ethical hacking, which helps with his role and what he's doing quite right now. Has worked for Westpac Bank and what is this? Is this NAC Technologies? I told you I was going to screw this up. How do you pronounce that?
Yeah, that's correct. You spelled it correctly, yeah. Or you pronounced it correctly, yeah.
How in the hell? I just can't believe I nailed that.
So 10 points, man.
Worked for NAC Technology as well. This is really interesting, and I'm excited to talk about this because we had already had a pre-show conversation. You've just got a really interesting life. I'm really excited to dive into that. But sold his first company at 33. Have not had a lot of people that have been entrepreneurs already sold in a company at that young of a day. Because that's young, right? Like, everybody thinks Mark Zuckerberg as like that's your typical Silicon Valley entrepreneurs in the 20s. That's insanely rare, right? Most successful entrepreneurs are in their 40s, most 50s, right? So to sell a company at 33, you've been doing some good things. And I think that makes sense because you've already, you're starting your insurance company now. And the more and more I talk to people like you, it gets me more excited of the future of the space. Because listen, man, 3 years ago, I was talking to a lot of 21-year-olds that didn't. I mean, I think they were really kind of drinking, smoking weed, and they just hit lightning in a bottle. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. But it has changed, and I love seeing it change. And I think that's it. Anything else to add on your resume? But it's already accomplished. You've worked for big companies. You've sold a company. You have degrees in the things that you're trying to create a company with Qorra. Anything else to add there?
No, look, I think you covered across the board there. And really, the main thing is it's about my passion and our passion is to just helping to solve the bigger problem. And that's just making the space more safer and secure. I mean, it was the analogy originally was like, we invented the car and then we put lines on the road and then we invented traffic lights and then we invented seatbelts after the fact. Right. So I'm just trying to say, how do we change that narrative to, make the space safer and more secure.
Yeah, no, I love it. So let's start here, man. This is how it always starts. World famous midlife crisis question. We like to describe it as, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give us Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. 1 being your childhood uh, influences, mentors, parents, cousins, uncles, whatever that may be, to help mold the mindset that you have today. 2, your professional career that we talked about a little bit. 3, your journey into Web3, currently what you're doing and beyond. So let's start with episode 1, my man. I cannot wait to hear it.
Yeah, cool. Episode 1, lovely. I guess you could say I was always been this entrepreneurial mindset from the early days. When I was 18 years old, I made my first $10,000 in one night. So what happened was we saw all these kids. I saw all these kids hanging out in the local mall doing nothing on a Friday, Saturday night, just getting drunk. And so I said, well, why don't we just get a hall and give them something to do? That's because they want to dance, they want to socialize, they want to meet other girls and guys and like that. And so we put on a party, and I just evolved that out and started to move it. And we just got overwhelmed. We had to have the police help us barricade the roads off because there was so many kids, because the need was so big. And then it evolved, and it was sort of like, okay, I want to dance. Okay, cool. You're the dancers now. I want to be, modeling. Cool. We'll set up a catwalk and create a fashion parade. And so it was about educating and giving them an opportunity to grow. And from that, it's just, different evolution of projects and ideas. What influenced me the most, and people that have influenced me the most, is all brands and also people. And one in particular is Rupert Murdoch. I love
Mhm.
his evolution from Australia, from there, and just the way he's evolved through, and how he's, some of his antics maybe not as friendly, but reading a little bit about him, or even
Right.
Howard
I was
Hughes.
surprised you brought that name up because, like, it's not always a positive when I hear that name.
Yeah. He's look, but I mean, but if you look back at his beginnings, right, like the origin
Mm.
stories from where he started and how it evolved through, and the competition he had, and the newspaper industry is quite challenging. So
Right.
yeah, that was a really good read. Just reading about his life and following his sort of patterns and stuff, and then maybe not so the later life, but the earlier journeys, and then at the end of the day, he did build quite a large empire. And then the other one is Richard Branson, very much that pragmatic, screw it, let's do it, let's just go for a gold and let's try and see.
Right.
Has been really really impacting on my sort of evolving. But a part of that is the other one is the brands, and I say Coca-Cola, like Coca-Cola synonymous. They just used guerrilla marketing in the early days. Traveled the
Right.
world, and you just see the Coca-Cola slapped everywhere and branded everywhere, and just using that mindset, going, okay, once I found some cursive writing with white over red, and I just threw it up to people just to see what they'd come back with, and
Right.
they thought, oh, it was Coca-Cola, but it actually wasn't. And that's when I thought, okay, wow, this is actually really impacting to evolving mindset of entrepreneurial and all these sort of things. So yeah, and my family have been heavily involved in a rag trade, in the clothing business, for a long time when we were younger. So just sort of being centered around business and understanding and seeing the mechanics of how things are working, but also just being a curious mind from the earliest days of school. Instead
Yeah.
of doing homework or doing exams, I'd be sitting there pondering out life and thinking about how to create this or do that, or how would I monetize this, or yeah. So
Yeah. So you said so many things there. Um, I want to go back though. Like there, I love the brands. I love the people and the reason that you influence. I think we can get that's like kind of a little more episode 2. I want to go back to the childhood. You mentioned your parents. You mentioned you tinkering in school. So I'd love to dive deeper there. First, can we talk about the family? What kind of entrepreneurs were there? Were they? What do you think growing up watching them act the way that they did? Like, what are those skill sets or mindsets do you think cultivated by seeing them? Because we talk about this a lot on the show. Um, there is the best education is by watching people, especially that you love, like your parents, right, doing, right? So I'm really interested in what did you pick up during that time frame and what was that experience like? Because not everybody has that, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because I mean, from the earlier days, I could sort of say, when we were growing up, on the side, my mum set up a little business doing chocolates, hand painted chocolates, and just evolved from that. It was just a side hustle, and then it just got too much for her because the orders were bigger than they could deliver, and the company grew quite big. It wasn't her company; she was just doing on the side. But my uncle, her brother, had started a clothing, just kids' clothing, from their factory, from their garage, I should say, and then they evolved, and they opened multiple stores all over the country. Big office, and just watching that at the same time, watching the technology evolution come through. So it was the early '80s, and then bringing in computers and watching them, the servers and all this sort of thing going on, and it's just this whole big compounding, and then the buildings that they had, and the staff, and the boardroom, and watching the whiteboard and all those particulars, and then and seeing spreadsheets and all these sort of things. It was kind of like, inadvertently, I wasn't conscious of them, but they were actually influencing me to going, wow, this is actually what's involved. Or it's not just sitting at the desk. It's the mechanics behind what's going on behind that. What do you need to do? Like, sort of drawing or mapping out things on the whiteboard and sort of controlling the direction. And then you've got the other side where you had the whole the design section where they're actually designing the patterns for the clothing, or we'd be at Christmas or Easter at my grandparents' place, and in between there, they'd be sitting there talking about color patterns, for a new design
Oh,
and stuff,
cool.
and all those little things just sort of tick along, and you go, well, wait a minute, there's so many intricate parts involved in this. There's so many moving parts, and
Right.
they're all just sort of collectively coming together. I mean, and that early ages, obviously, is still defining myself. I was thinking about eating Easter eggs and what Christmas presents I'm getting, but at the same time, you're still fascinated by, wow, they actually have these computers, because they've got all
Right.
these computers now to run their operation, and like, wow, computers are great. Um, so I want to get involved in that, but also too, I want to be watching what they're doing, and the multiples of all these sort of things, and as that evolved, it just helps me to start think more, I guess, business focused, like a bit more, business minded, going, there's an opportunity here. But they were solving a problem. They were providing fashionable kids clothing to children, so that, or to
Right.
parents, because parents want to dress them well. So it's like, okay, instead of going to Target or somewhere else, that's like, how do we keep that price point the same, but give them the class where they're not paying for Gucci or Prada, but they're actually getting that same sort of quality. And it was really, really interesting to see how that all sort of evolved and came together. And then, yeah, the bigger mechanics. So that was really, really impacting.
Yeah, no, that's dude, fascinating already. And you said a couple things that I would never even have thought about myself, right? Is you are young and you're spending Christmases hearing people talk about business, right? And then ideating and whiteboards and Excel sheets, like you're having these exposures to how uh, it's hard. Like I said before, that if you don't see the inner workings, people say they want to start a business, but they don't realize like how much actual work goes into it. And you had that firsthand growing up, which was cool. One of the questions that I had is just more of a random thought. Starting companies is stressful, right? It becomes your life. As a kid, I'm assuming you didn't pick up on that, or did you feel like um there was imbalance there, or were you like kind of part of the crew and we're just excited to witness that? I'm interested in that because we talk a lot about balance and the stress, and that actually there's negative parts to starting a company. You sacrifice relationships, you do a lot of things, right? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so without bleeding into episode two a little bit too much, but what there is a lot of learning that, like the trade-offs, because there was tough times after the sort of market crash in the '90s, that collapsed the world. There was that effect where there had to be compromises, and then in between that, there was the challenges of, what do we save, what do we not? the stresses of people leaving or coming and going, and you're scaling, and then all of a sudden now you got all these franchises and stuff. So hearing those sort of questions and going, wait a minute, there's a lot of mechanics involved in this. There's a lot of details involved in this. There's a lot of stress involved in this. I don't think I spent enough time as a kid to think about what was involved in it. I was just
Right.
fascinated by the growth and the scale. So me and my younger brother were very fascinated by the growth scale and what was capable, and the whole, wow, this is fascinating. But you learn that quickly, through the iterative experiences of setting up businesses, that it is painful. It's quite commanding and demanding, and that really is. I'll explain further, but that's where the name Qorra actually has a,
Right.
a symbiotic resonance, to what we are. Yeah.
Yeah. So one more question about like more of childhood, and then we can get into like maybe high school, college times. You did mention that you were always interested in tinkering and figuring out how to work things. I love this question, and well, it's not even a question, but just thoughts, right? Um there's the thought that I have that, like, some of it's curiosity, some of it's just you're born and and you think that way, right? How much of that kind of curiosity, building, tinkering came from your environment, you think, opposed to that's just how you think that's the way you were born, right? Interested in that.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I'm just going back as far as I can remember. Maybe when I was 10 or 11,
Right,
that we had the thing like the jump rope for heart, skipping rope, to raise money, for a heart foundation. And then there was other ones. It was like the MS Readathon. I like to read. I was an avid reader, so I would go around and write all these books and read, and then I'd go around and just collect, from people, knocking on doors as you did in the early days. Now it'd be super strange, but anyway, it's like doing that, and people would, and I'd raise this money, and it was like, oh, I just raised $20 or $30, whatever it was. And as a kid, in in the 90s, it's like, well, not even the 80s. It's like, this is amazing. It's so good, and you donating it up, but it was kind of like, wow, this enterprising sort of thing. It's like people having and giving, and you got a solution and stuff like that. And I think they all affected. And then further on from that was a funny story. So there was a go-karting, place opened up across the road from where we were living, and it was like $10 for a license. You had to pay for a license before you could even drive, right? And it's quite expensive to drive. Anyway, my
right,
parents were like, no, you're not getting it. No, we're not giving you the money for it. So me and my brother thought, okay, how do we do this? How do we achieve the objective of doing that? So what we did is we got, and I'd seen this on the road just driving along. Someone's doing window washing. So we actually got a bucket. We walked up to the end of the street, and because it was where we were was right on a main road and sort of traffic light. So people pulling up, and we were purposely pressing the traffic light to stop them. And we're washing windows. And we collected that money, and that money was then able to allow us to go and pay for our driver's license, and pay for our, to get the go karting on and stuff like that. And I guess that just all evolved from watching out the enterprising, understanding, going, wait a minute, you need to provide a service to get, revenue, and from that revenue, then you can use that for other things. Obviously, we used it for our own benefit to
right, right,
to go karting. But further thinking, wait a minute, like this is before the days where, in particular in Australia, I should say, like hand car washing and stuff like that wasn't a popular thing. It was around, but it wasn't it wasn't a common thing. Now you have automated car wash operations left, right, and
right.
center. But it was just a sort of thing. And it's like, okay, wait, thinking about this further, we could have taken that, and you could evolve that through, and others did turn into sort of more profitable businesses and stuff. But it was just the point of going, okay, seeing the mechanics of how this works. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's interesting to me because I struggle with this a lot, right? And I think most entrepreneurs in the beginning, or you're thinking of an idea, money is one of the drivers, right? Like in your case, in the go-kart, you needed to get money because you wanted to go-karting, right? So you're like,
Yeah.
well, how can I acquire that? And but then there's the product of like, okay, do I really want to scale a business washing cars? Like, what's the end goal there? And I struggle with that a lot because I really do think for me personally to be um interested for a long time. It's got to be something uh, that attracts me, and hence content media creation. Like I've been in design my whole life, and this is what keeps me going, is because it fills a part of my inside that is missing with my horrible, boring PM corporate day job, right? Um, I think what I'm hearing you say, and I'd love to hear your advice or thoughts on this, is it's almost like no matter what you're working on, that kind of, let's say it's a car wash or a window business, doesn't matter to you as much because you like figuring things out and tinkering. Is that right?
Yeah, that's just me. I just think in a different one. Someone said to me once, like, I don't know how your brain thinks. It's like the Matrix, you see things, and I do. I just look at the mechanics and beyond. I don't look at what's here. I look at like what's way in the future, what's way in the past, what's in between there, and it's sort of like that. And it's trying to put all that together. But yeah, it's about the challenge of things. It's like, okay, how are we solving? How do we solve a bigger problem? But also too, and initially in the early days, I'll admit to say the early days was more about, the revenue side. It's like, okay, I want to do this because I want revenue, because then you've got the revenue to do that. But then as you start to evolve and start to fine tune your development of who you are as a person, and this is just me personally, it's come out, it's about not the social impact, but how do we make the space better? What is this? What's the impact of this project or this product doing? Yes, I like to solve problems. Like I like to build Lego. It's
Mhm.
solving puzzles is one of my things. It's because it's fun. It's just keeps my brain operational. I'll sit there and write a program, to just code something because it's just keeping me active. But it's not about the program. It's thinking about solving that problem. But then
Yeah,
it's like, again, further on from that now, as the evolve, you go, what is the social impact, or what is the benefit to this? What is the and now they call it, obviously the wording you don't know as you're younger, but it's like product market fit, is it consumer market fit? There's all these sort of clever words that you learn once you start to study and go to uni and stuff. But prior to that, it was more about, okay, if I do this, how's this going to help everybody else? How's this going to collectively benefit everybody else into enjoyment of life, or just
right.
quality of life, and all these sort of things. I just have I developed my ethos as I was younger, as I was coming through, even before my teenager years, going, okay, this is actually more important to me. Yes, I like solving problems, but I like solving problems that actually help benefit other people collectively, so we can all have fun and enjoy ourselves better. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that answer, right? And it's why I think I might have told you this comes up often. People are probably sick of me saying it, but I went through like a major depressive where I got really sick, right? And when you come out the other end, you really evaluate like why do you do anything that you do, right? Uh and having comments, there was a comment maybe a couple weeks ago about one of the podcasts I did, and the guy was like, "Listen, man, I struggle from drugs and alcohol. If I would have had somebody like you and the other guy that I was talking to in my life, like it would have made a huge difference. I'm glad to have met you virtually and been able to listen to that podcast. Like that, that's why I do what I do, right? And it seems like you have come to the same conclusion in a different way. What I'm interested, because you have such a fascinating way of looking at things, for someone that is maybe sitting on the couch watching TV, but they also have this kind of nagging thought in their being or embody. Like, some people like, I know this is not what life's about, and I know I could be doing more, but like is overwhelmed. Any advice or thoughts for that person to kind of kickstart into gear, or just yeah, words of wisdom on the way you think and the things you've been through?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's a little bit like in the Matrix, and now we use the Matrix thing, but it came to me, it's like Neo follow the white rabbit sort of situation. You're sitting there on
Right.
the couch, you're pondering something, you're watching something, you're mind numbing out, which is fine, watching Netflix or something, and then all of a sudden an idea pops into your head and you're like, oh, what about that? What I can suggest to say to do is to start with anyway, is because if you're anything like me, you go on a rabbit warren and it's like that. But just get a piece of paper and just write it down. Just jot it down, or I use my phone sometimes now and I just record notes, right? and then I save the note what it is, like a voice note, and then just leave it alone, and that's it, and just go away from it. Because two things are happening, and this is just me calling on my psychology background now, but you've got a bit of something subconsciously is happening in your brain, right? That you're actually creating something there, and it's like a thought, and it's just like a little seed that you're planting in the ground. And so I think the first thing is the fact that if you take the initiative to record it, write it down, note it, that means you started to bring it into practice. You've actually brought it to life. You've just given it a little bit of water. And I think that's where it all starts from there. And then from that evolution, you might not pick it up for 10 years, 15 years. But if you put it down on paper, so you've given it life, and then it will potentially grow itself, or somebody else might do it. Or you might be years down the track, see something and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I thought of that way back. And that's actually a solution to the thing, because I sort of hit a brick wall and went, I can't get beyond this point. Because if I do that, then it's like it hits a roadblock. It's too hard. I'm done. So my advice is just start, just write it out, or just note it down, and just put it to the side and let it come back to you. If it's meant to come back to you, it will come back to you.
Brilliant.
Like, you'll follow it, or it will find you.
Yeah, love it. Fantastic advice. We're only we're already 25 minutes into this fantastic conversation. Let's kind of start progressing a little bit here. Anything, I'm assuming, I don't know, what do you call high school in Australia? Is it called high school? That's what we're probably say. Yeah. So high school, thinking about college, like now you're starting to think about going to, we call it college, you call it university. You're starting to have to make the decisions of like, what am I interested in? Any stories or insights and kind of that period of your life that you could share with us?
Yeah, so in the early days, I was introduced. So when I started high school, we call it seventh grade, year seven. So just after primary school, preschool, and so what happened was it was a big push. So the schools were moving into. I'm a child of the '90s. And they were moving into bringing in computers into schools. And so they had the old sort of legacy systems and everything else like that. And at the time, Apple, right under Steve Jobs, had a really smart campaign. It was genius, in my opinion, from a marketing perspective, because they went to all the private schools, all the state schools, and they ran a massive campaign where there was a huge rebate to buying Apple computers inside the schools, right? So obviously schools are like, wait, we need to spend the money on this, we need to do this. And this is where I think Microsoft and all that dropped the ball, but and that's it. So anyway, long story short, they implemented Apple computers all over the whole school. And so computers were fascinating for me, and being the curious mind, I was able to spend a lot more time figuring out how to, then the teachers were enjoying locking systems up and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, well, don't put someone like me in a box, right? So I found my way around the computer networks lab, and I spent a lot of time in there, and it was fascinating. And this is early 90s. This is 91, I think. Yeah. Jordan was still playing for the Bulls, and the good old days.
Yeah, I'm a product of the '90s too. You're getting me excited talking about all this.
Yeah. It's like it's that's it. It was the good old days. But yeah, so I just fascinated by that. But as that evolved too, one of the things I was sort of defining where I was going, and this is a good point, like I was going through which direction, who, where, what. And one of the points that just started to attract me too was photography. Like photography was important. I liked capturing stuff, because my grandfather just took photos as a hobby. And so I was attracted by that whole, cameras, photos and stuff. So I'm like, okay, these two trajectories, but I was really drawn into the and I got a sort of very eclectic mindset of interest. Like there was I was never sporty, but I was fascinated by, I loved basketball. Most kids collecting cards. The NBA, the Upper Deck cards, and also too then computers. So you've got this whole sort of evolution coming through and what the computers are doing. So it's sort of streamed along that way, and then. When I got to 10th grade, so the high school I was at, only went to 10th grade, and then you had to go to another school, which was part of the thing. Like they merged them together, at a different
Mhm.
campus where it was like the final 2 years. We call it in Victoria where I grew up, it's called VCE. It's like 11th grade and 12th grade.
Right.
And so I had a choice to go there, and it was all boys, Christian Brothers school. I don't say I was the best student. Like I spent a lot of time on detention,
Mm.
and but
Academically, though, I'm assuming you were doing okay. Not you.
academically, I was. I wasn't as obedient as the teachers would like me
Ah,
to be.
gotcha. Not liking to follow rules. All right, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. Because I was kind of like, okay, well, if you're saying this, what about this?
Right,
And
right.
I guess you weren't taught at that early days to have too much. Now I think the educational system has changed, but this is a whole thing. And so furthering on from that, to sort of pivoting through, I had a choice to go to the secondary school, the high school, and I went for the open day and I looked at them. We picked out subjects, and it was sort of like physics and maths and moving this sort of through, and computers and electronics and fiber optics was coming out. All these sort of things was just evolving,
Yeah.
and this technology. I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I picked all those subjects to sort of, set a career path. And then all of a sudden, one of my friends said, "Oh, I think I'm going to go to another school, which is called Swinburne's, which is part of the university. And it's a big arts school. They actually have in Australia anyway, in Victoria, they have one of the best film production schools in Australia. And like 30,000 applicants apply, and only about 20 get accepted every year. So it's
Wow.
very high and prestigious. Yeah, it's like a super the thing. So I thought, I'm like, oh, this is a curveball. This is a co-ed school. It's further away. It's like I've got to travel an hour every day to get there. I don't know if I can handle this. I'm used to wearing uniform every day, like very regimented, and that was probably good for my personality.
Yeah.
But long story short, I decided, and my mum was like, if that's what you want to do, go for it. Like, okay, I don't think you're going to last, but anyway, give it a try. And I did, and I went there, and I just thrived. It opened my world up to because the computer lab became a completely different thing. It was like completely detailed. Like we had the old days, the bulletin boards and talking on Merc,
Yeah.
IRC chat. And it was like, wow, this is fascinating. And I remember sitting there hypothesizing with the computer science teacher about when we would actually have a gig of RAM, right? And
Yeah.
back then it was like, I think 16 meg or not even 16 kilobyte, and it was going up
Right.
and moving through. And we we're just calculating the mathematics using Moore's law and going through. And it's like, yeah, I think by this time and this date and all this sort of stuff and what we could do with it was fascinating. But at the same time, inadvertently, I was introduced to photography. It was like, so it was the high school, but it was like the incubation space for the university. So they took,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was really good. Very, very liberal school. Like there wasn't very many, how can I say, governing rules. You could do whatever you wanted.
Right.
We had different communities. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's not. Is it American History X? I think it
Yeah.
is. Or no, one of the higher learning. Come anyway, but whereas like the university, it was almost like a university culture where you had different groups. You had, your goths, you had your skaters, you had your people, of graffiti artists, you had your people that
Yeah.
just wanted to have a dance party at lunchtime, and all these sort of things. And but what opened it was photography, and I started to get into photography, and there was the dark room in the lab, and at the same time it was video editing, and I was like, wow, this is fascinating, and it just for me it just came really natural, and I was torn between computers, getting in the dark, what do we call the dark web now? Those bulletin boards and those old chat rooms and stuff,
Right, right, right.
and having fun in those spaces. Not you're just innocent. You're just curiously, exploring, and just thinking about this now, and you're sort of talking about childhood influences. Back in the day, where I grew up, or where my grandparents are, across the road from there, there was I've got an older brother, and his friend lived across the road, and he was heavily into computers from the 70s, 70s and 80s. He actually owns a computer store. He was heavily involved in that space. And so, again, as a child, 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, we used to go to his house and see all his computer hardware, and he was heavily into computers and, doing stuff online. And whatever, you know, I mean, it's kind of funny because where I grew up, it's not really funny, but where I grew up in that area, that suburb and that postcode in Victoria was where Julian Assange was from as well. So it was like, I don't know, they're all sort of, you know, there's all young kids looking for crazy ideas using the computers and stuff. And so for me, going to, he wasn't Julian Assange, by the way, but anyway, I'm just sort of saying his name was Paul, and we went to his house, and it was like, oh my god, you're a kid, you know, you're 7 years old, 8 years old, you're seeing all this electronic stuff, and you're seeing computers and monitors, and you know, and it was just fascinating. And I guess fast forward, you know, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years, and you're like, oh my goodness, I remember this as a child, and it's been buried subconsciously, and now I'm getting exposed to this at a higher level. I mean, I'm really engaged in this. And so, yeah, that's where that evolution of that technology, I want a part of this. I want to be a part of this. I want to enjoy this. But the deviation pull to photography. Now we have at the time there was no digital photography. It was, you know, developed your camera rolls manually, VHS tapes, you know, very old school. To now we have that sort of digital and video digital, and now we're talking, you know, live streaming. If we talked about this in, you know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we'd be like, you're this is for the government, you know, or something like that, or universities. So that's where that sort of influenced my my thought psychology of where I want to go, and so I pushed that, and I had two trajectory paths. Could have gone down the cybersecurity, computer security, networking sort of avenue, or the photography path. I ended up choosing the art photography path for a little bit, and and then chased my way back.
What made you realize the photography part? Because you ended up getting cybersecurity, right, and then psychology, right? So how did that kind of deter? Was it that you weren't going to make any money, or what are the thoughts there?
Yeah, well, if we're moving into a little bit of stage 2 and stage 1, 2, or episode 2, episode 3.
Let's roll into that. I mean, I think that was a fantastic kind of segue into stage 2. I'm really interested in you know, those skill sets that you learned, and then getting into kind of your professional career. I mean, I definitely want to spend a good chunk of time on Qorra and everything that you're doing now too. So maybe I would love like kind of the highlight of the beginning of like you getting done uni, why you chose what you did, and then maybe 2 to 3 highlights of the professional career. And I definitely want to kind of capstone on you selling a company at a young age. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, so I'll give you, there's quite a lot of length in between there. So let's start with the photography path. I took the photography path, but the irony part was I was actually doing quite well, and my teachers were I was capturing their attention. They're like, you could do really well. And then so we have a thing, it's called year 13. It's basically a portfolio year before you go to university, and you prepare your portfolio for that higher level. And I was preparing for that. But the irony is I never actually finished 12th grade. I just and the reason why I didn't was because I went and set up this, just running dance parties, underage dance parties. At the same time, just hustling on the side. I was promoting parties. I'm just like to network and invite people and be very social and stuff. And so I went to a party, an underage, when I was 13, and I thought, felt like I was so good because I was going to a nightclub where adults are going to, but we're all there during the day, and you know, you're ordering your soft drink, and you felt like you were, you know, adult, you're a teenager.
Right.
And as I kept going, and it was cool, and I remember coming back to school, and I told my friends, I'm like, oh, and they went like, nah, no way. And then I brought a friend with me, and I showed him the pass, and I said, look, here's the ticket, right? The ticket stub. And they're like, oh my goodness. And you know, so it became that evolved. And so from that, I guess it didn't just happen overnight to put this on. Like, I was working through progressively. I was promoting these clubs and seeing what was needed, and seeing, you know, youth wanting something to do. Like we used to call them blue light discos in Australia. A police would run, and so they stopped that. Excuse me. And so then I thought, I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna roll into this. And at the same time, I was doing photography, and then they said, we need somebody to take photos for our magazine. Do you want to do that? I'm like, great. I'm promoting. working in the space, having fun with these things, and I'm earning some money on the side by taking photos. Why not? And it just helped me socialize and become into that. And then I moved into to utilizing my photography skill set, building my portfolio, and moving to that. And then I just sort of deviated away because I thought, well, let's run this dance party, one night.
Right.
And all of a sudden I made all this money in one night. It's like, wait a minute, this is actually quite lucrative. And this is actually a lot of fun because it became this collective community where they're all sort of hanging out and they'd come over our place during the week. And, and we just had a very open family space. Like, we'd come home and all of a sudden there'd be people there that my mum would just be cooking food for them and talking to them, all the kids are coming over and just hanging over. It's like, oh, we're going to the Mazzichettis, and it was just fun. And it was kind of like, again, it was like, so that evolution then, and that pulled me away from the photography. But one thing that actually captured my attention, which was kind of interesting, was at the same time, I'm in high school, I'm young, I'm trying to earn some money. So I was working in restaurants just as a waiter and waiting stuff. And I got a job and a part-time in a restaurant, a small little fine dining restaurant. And no, unbeknownst to me, I'm just serving food and stuff. And I started going to the kitchen and I got fascinated by what he was doing. Like, he's putting out food. It was like art. And I was like, this is delicious and it looks ridiculous. But not only that, just watching what was going on. It's like the movie Ratatouille, you see like things flying around, and it was like the symphony orchestra, and it was controlled. And I was just sitting there and I was like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, I want to do this. I want to do this. And so for 9 months, right, I was working there on the floor, and he'd be like, and the owner, it was husband and wife, 40-seater restaurant, and he'd be like, you want to be in the kitchen? And I'm like, oh, bad. He goes, yeah, not tonight. Back out on the floor. And I was like, and when, and it's like, I guess I'm just that personality. It's like, I want it. I really want to do this. I can do this. I can conquer this. And so my dad was a very good cook, and my brother actually did a little bit of a chef apprenticeship as well. And so, again, there's this influence, older brother, and knives and this and that. And it was tough in the early days working for tough chefs and stuff. And I was like, but I was fascinated by this. So one day, calls me up. His name is Mark, and he's Polish, thick Polish accent. He said, Adam, still want to work in the kitchen? I'm like, oh, yes. He's like, do you have a white jacket? I said, no. He goes, wear black pants, be here, half an hour. Hangs the phone up. I'm like, oh my goodness, I got my, this is amazing. So I did this. So I turned up and I thought, I'm ready to go. Look, I'm going to be Gordon Ramsay right now. And I got there and he's like, okay, cook the fries. And butter the Daryl molds. I was so shattered. Butter the Daryl molds to grow the souffle. And I was like, no, this is not what I had in mind, but okay. And then he finished the shift and he's like, okay, I'm going home now. Clean my kitchen. I was like, what? Anyway, and then he started to tell me the story, and he said, in Poland, he goes, when I wanted to be a chef, my brother and I, all we wanted to do was be chefs. We started when we were very young, right? Poor country, growing up in Europe, so it was very hard. So they worked. He said, we were 14 years old. Him and his twin brother were 14 years old, and he said, I had to clean the kitchen for 4 years before I was allowed to cook. And my chef used to walk around, right? It was a big hotel kitchen, and walk around and say, Mark, bottle and rag. That's it. He said, if I wanted to learn, I had to look after hours and watch what was going on, watch the chefs, what they were doing and stuff. And that just empowered me to say, wait a minute, wow. And he said, I came to Australia with nothing, just my hands and my suitcase and my wife. Because now I've bought this business, I've got 2 houses, I've got 3 sons, like we've, and they're in their 40s at the time too. And I was like, wow, this is a really empowering story. Right. And so I moved on the rabbit, and he gave me the opportunity. He saw how bad I wanted it because of 9 months on the floor. And so he gave me the opportunity to start cooking. And there was a guy there, John, Spanish speaking, not much English, but very, very good at cooking and stuff. And he said, make me a promise you're going to go all the way. You're going to go qualify and go all the way. And I said, okay, I promise you. So on that promise, I went down the rabbit warren of becoming a chef. I dropped off my cooking, my photography and my computer passions and all those things there. They were still on the side and I was still ambitiously loving there. But I
Right.
went on the path of becoming a chef. And so I was a chef, and over the course of 22 years, I was a professional chef. And in that process, I fell in love with cooking. But being so, and I can say this openly now too, is saying being so ambitious and so good, I was ambitious, I was keen and very eager learner.
Right.
I took on more than I was willing, or more than I was able to take on. And as a chef, it's quite demanding. So I started off as this apprentice, went through my apprenticeship, and he ended up selling the business, and I had to go somewhere else. And I got thrown into the deeper ends, and I evolved and I thrived, and it was great. But then I got to a point where I reached critical mass, and then I thought, oh, I'm ready for the next step because the opportunity was available to me. And I went from apprentice straight to head chef of another restaurant, a new restaurant opening. And I just got burnt out because I didn't know really what I was doing. I didn't have all the additional pedigree. And so I got really angry and burnt from it. And I retracted from it for about 6 years, 5, 6
Yeah.
years, because I was damaged by it. I thought, and I didn't know at the time. I was too proud. I was like, oh, this is crap. This is not for me. But the point is that I was actually quite immature in what I was doing. And so I went back to just find a job. And I thought I stumbled on finance, selling mortgages and financial planning.
Right.
And through that evolution, I did quite well out of it, and it was really engaging and good. And I thought, okay, this is fun. I'm helping people out. I'm helping people consolidate their debts and refinancing and getting bigger. And then I started to look at the mechanics of how the operation that I was working for. I thought I could do this myself. So I started to bring a team around me, and we created our own company, creating this thing. So I ended up setting up my own business, and I had, I was only 24 or 25 at the time. I had 18 staff.
So it was,
Over two
it was like, a real estate mortgage lending business then?
financial planning, mortgage lending.
Okay. So before we go there, that was fascinating, by the way. I love that story. And the one I only really wanna touch on one thing, because you hear this a lot too. And the Polish guy, you're getting all jazzed up, you go in and you're just destroyed, right? Because he's making you make fries and clean the kitchen. What do you think the benefit was? Because, like, yeah, there could be some people that hears that story and then being like, that's almost militaristic. It's that guy's a little too harsh. But what do you think going through an experience, an apprenticeship, by the way, which is like not the thing anymore, right? I think apprenticeships are really important and interesting to me. What comment on that whole experience? I think the benefits and lessons learned there. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, look, I can talk a lot to that, and I even worked at McDonald's when I was 15.
Yeah.
And it was my first or second job. I think Kmart was my first job, and then no, that was my second job. So McDonald's was my first job. And what did it teach me? It taught me a few things. It taught me to make sure my uniform was clean and pressed, right?
Uh-huh.
It taught me presentation, right? Making sure
Mm,
you're presented well, everything was presented well. But the main thing it taught me timing. That silly, annoying thing you go to McDonald's and you hear the time of the fry thing going beep, 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 beep.
yeah.
It taught me that it's 1 minute 35 to cook the perfect fries. Right now, I know that McDonald's spent $20 million just figuring out to get the right temperature and everything else like that. So there's a science behind that. I love that. But what it taught me was that everything was perfectly, you need to do this to execute. And yes, it maybe is a bit militaristic and stuff like that, but I just evolved through. So going through my apprenticeship and the punishing things that you had to do, right, to sort of evolve through, it was tough. But then once he explained to me, like Mark explained to me about how he had to clean and everything else like that, and it's like, okay, it makes sense because it's also a mindset. You're delivering something important, and having that mindset, you could do it messy or you could do it clean.
Right.
Doing clean, you can do this efficiency thing, and it teaches you to keep quite regimented. And in that space, in being a chef and anything else like that, you need to be quite diligent and structured, because you're not going to be able to succeed successfully consistently this is the thing, consistency is key, because if you don't have that consistency, you're going to fall over. It's like the house of cards, it's going to collapse. And so I think that's really important. And during my career as well, I was able to work for the Defence Force as a civilian contractor, teaching the the Defence Force, the Navy Defence Force, on how to cooking, like they were being chefs and stuff, and they needed to have a certain amount of civilians in there. And so watching them and watching these 15, 16-year-olds, they'd finish their service, right, on in that mess, and pull the grates up, scrub the thing down, everything clean. It was like bang, 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 bang. And what it does is, it means the next time you come back in, it's going to be clean, because I've walked into kitchens and I've walked into places or even offices and stuff where it's just a mess and you can't see what you're doing. And so instilling those sort of things in there, it helps to execute. And then again, if you're better prepared, right, in anything you do, it doesn't matter if it's cooking or business or anything else like that, the better prepared you are, the easier you are, you're going to execute things. You might miss things, but that's okay. Your margin for error is fine, but you've still got enough resources and tools. If you fumble up on something, you're still good, and nobody's going to know any different. And that's really what taught me by doing that apprenticeship and going through that regimented, sort of repetitive, painful sort of things, and those little things. Like now I know that, putting the chips in the fryer. And it was funny, at one point, it was actually amusing for me. This is really what captured me, like sold me. I put the fries down and he wasn't looking, and I know he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the stove and that, and he said, "It's not enough." I said, "What do you mean it's not enough?" He goes, "It's not enough." Right? I pulled it up. I said, "No, it'll be enough." I pulled it up, put it on the plate. It wasn't enough.
Right.
I was like, "How did you know?" He goes, "Because I could see. I could see from the corner of my eye," and this is, I learned about peripheral vision. I could see from the corner of my eye, and just from experience, I know that wasn't enough to be on the plate for what you needed to do, right? Which would then mean you'd have to cook more, which would then mean it's going to hold up everything else, right? So it's like that domino effect of like, everything lining up, and it's like, oh my goodness, that makes sense, right? That's that logical thing. So again, the repetitiveness or the regimentedness of everything else like that, it's kind of like, and I know I keep using these analogies like, Karate Kid, wax on, wax off sort of situation. It's the same thing. It's like that, your muscle learning to saying, okay, these sort of things are helping you to better define. And I sort of say, I think every child should go through a bit of McDonald's training, just to give them that life skills of, I've got to make sure I'm dressed well, my uniform's clean, I'm presenting well, I'm speaking well, because you're customer facing, timing, all these sort of things. It just teaches you minor skills that you don't really realize when you're younger, that actually influence you later. So when I had applicants coming through, I'd be like, "Oh, you've had Mac, cool, you're hired." And that was some of the best apprentices that I had coming through for me. But also too, I learned when I went to Kmart, the manager that hired me out of a couple others, he said, "I picked you because your experience with McDonald's." And I said, "Oh, that was really interesting. Like, how does food relate to working in a department store?" And he said, "Because I've learned from my experiences." He was a lot older. My experiences of that regiment of, that little bit of education you've had in the early days tells me that you understand some of the conditional things there that are required, and that's important forward through. So
Right.
And
It's the same thing, like you said, with Gordon Ramsay. Like his restaurants are like orchestras, and they're systems, right? And people have learned the systems. And I'm with you. I used to bartend and wait tables, and I did that in my teenage years. I obviously didn't bartend until I was a little older. But I think everybody should do a food service job, because it teaches you so many skill sets. One, being prepared. Two, multitasking. Three, dealing with customer facing, like, and it's a bigger kind of, like, I think a success principle in life is the hardest thing in the world to do is when you have a shit ass person that you're waiting on, and they're being mean to you for no apparent reason, but you still have to put the smile on, right? So hard to do, but it's such a great skill set to learn. Fascinating conversation. I love it. So, moving kind of towards the mortgages, is this the business you eventually sold? Or is it another business? That's another business.
It's another business. So I got that point. So I got that mortgage business to a point where it was capitalizing, it was doing really well, and and this is where I guess going back to the early stages where you evolve your ethos of what's actually important to you about
Yeah.
being a business. Is it revenue? Are you capitalistic, or are you actually thinking for the greater good? And I got the business to a certain point, and for me personally, I was like, I can't deliver what I'm selling these products and we're providing this service, but I'm not finding the customers all responding as well as they should, because I'm basically giving them this liabilities, or helping them consolidate it, but most people just fall back into that sort of trap
Right.
space. Long story short, I just said I can't deliver what the customer wants, so consciously I can't consciously keep going on with this business, even though it's very lucrative and it's amazing, right? It was like, big revenues, 6-figure revenues, monthly revenues coming through. I'm like, I can't do this anymore because I can't deliver what they want.
I
And so
love it.
I made the
You're providing a
conscious.
product that gets them back into the same cycle you were trying to help them get out of, right?
Yep,
Wow.
yep, yep. So I just went, no, just packed it down, and took a bit of a hiatus and went back to cooking, just to feed the creative side of things, like that
Right.
creativity side of things. Went back into there, and in that evolution, I I did it actually. I have a third degree as well, and I did went back to
Of
just to.
course you do. I would expect nothing less at this point.
So this was my first dabble back in. So my first degree, I went back. I actually went to do. Might be interesting. I went to study theology. And I thought I just went and studied theology. I was curious about um, the Bible and all the evolution of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I actually worked for a period of time in between. I did a little bit of in my hiatus break between that, being practicing to be a minister, and it just wasn't for me. If
Right.
it wasn't for me. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the psychology behind things, the deeper mechanics, the understanding, and this is what led me into the behavioral psychology side, because I did a lot of counseling and pastoral caring and stuff, and I started to get a real taste for this side of things, and it's like, this really resonates with me, and I really enjoy it, and I'm naturally inclined that way to be empathetic. I am an empathetic person, an empath, and so I want to evolve down to that, and so that sort of came later. So I completed that degree, and I just sort of use it for anything. I was looking, to do a PhD, and it just for curiosity's sake, just to dig
Yeah.
further into it, but I just didn't fit the academic sort of window, and so I needed to do something, and I got back involved into cooking, and by in between the cooking space too, I'd travelled overseas working as a private chef around the world. I lived in Florida for about 4 years, and this is just cross pollinating between. I sort of consolidated back down, right? And I was like, post the business, post my cooking, post everything. I need to do something. I need to, be creative and get something there. So, in between my studying, I was like, bread. I love bread. I want to learn to bake bread. So I taught myself how to make
By
bread.
the way, this is one of the best stories we've had yet on this podcast, man. You've gone from bread to cooking to mortgages. Like, I am loving every second of this. Okay, we're on bread. Let's take it from there.
So I got into bread, and I learned bread, and the mechanics of bread is quite intricate because it's actually science based, right? And it goes back to the whole thing of, where do you start, right? What ingredients you need? It goes back. So I used my chef regimented experience there, right? It's all about temperature and timing. I'm like, okay, I know this stuff, and then so brought that through and evolved, and then I had a passion. I've got a passion. I've got a bit of a sweet tooth. I'm like, okay, so making sweets, and just this whole evolution. So I started making bread, and then a friend of mine that sets ice cream shops up around the world, and he's a pastry chef from Italy. And so we started making ice creams and different stuff, and he was fascinated with my bread, and just exchanged ideas. And as we evolved, his wife's actually celiac, so he started creating
Mm.
biscuits, right? And there's these Italian almond biscuits, and he turned them into gluten free. He made them gluten free biscuits, and at the time, gluten free didn't exist. I had customers, I had people coming in going, I'm gluten free, or my husband's gluten free, and I have to think of all these ideas. And so fast forwarding through, post the break, post the study, post the first degree, post everything. I thought, okay, cool, bread, mastered bread, got it, exactly how I want it to look like. It was amazing. I tested it with everybody, and then I'm like, biscuits. So we started making pastries and biscuits, and I started making these biscuits, and I grew up on these, almond sort of biscuits. I was like, oh, love them,
Yeah.
and started sharing them out. And I thought, hey, wait a minute, what if I turn this into a business, like it's just a little side hustle? So I was still finishing off my theology degree, and I was sitting there, and I was like, okay, cool. So what if I do this and sell it at the market, right? So I'll try my luck, and create a quick little, mocked up a quick little brand, used Fiverr and put it together, and red and white, and called it the thing, and put it together. And then I was like, cool. I reached out to one of this premium sort of craft market. I can only try. I said, look, I got these gluten-free biscuits and I want to sell them. And she's like, sure, we don't have anything like that. And I was like, oh, okay, amazing. So I turned up, and it was a funny story. It was turned up, and me and my mum, we turned up to help me out. And it's like everybody's got these marquees and everything else like that. And we just turned up with a little fold-out table and a little tablecloth, a little red and white check tablecloth that I had on my dining table, right? I just put that over, right? And just the biscuits in little cellophane bags with like, string and stuff, and the business card was the swing tag, right? I thought,
Yeah.
and you just like, everybody's got these massive marquees, and we're just out in the sun, bleeding sun, with this like table, and it was super funny. I thought, oh my goodness, I don't even know how we got here, but it's fun. And the point is, people just really resonated, and they looked and they said, this is amazing. They really enjoyed it. And it was good, and it just evolved from there, and it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
and got to the point where Qantas, one of the national carriers, wanted to for all their lounges around Australia. They wanted to store the biscuits in their lounges around Australia, and so I thought, we need to capitalize on it. We need to extend this out, and this is going back to the business mindset, the education of McDonald's, cooking, chefing, all that logical baseline. Everything was compounding onto the next thing, right. The marketing, all these sort of things. Like, okay, cool. And so so evolved the business out. Long story short, evolved the business out, bolted it out, and got to a point where it's like, okay, this is reaching critical mass point. And so I had two paths to go. I can go to the path where I go and get VC money, and we expand, and we need to set up like a multi-million-dollar operation. And then I thought to myself, if I did that, I'm going to be a slave to this project.
Right.
That I'm not really, I love it, but I'm not that in love with it, because it was all handmade, and it was quite labor intensive, and gluten-free wasn't a thing. It was evolving. Gluten-free was like coming out. So it was like, this is huge. I'm gluten-free. Oh my goodness, I can enjoy this guilty pleasure.
Right.
And so fast forwarding all that, I said to myself, I don't want to do this long term, right? I just don't. And so I set it up. I put it out there again. I thought, I'm going to put it out there and see who wants to buy it, right? Just try and put it out. Got a friend or friend of my brother's is a business broker, like a business realtor. Yeah. And he came over, looked at all the particulars, looked at the figures, looked at everything. He's like, okay, cool, no worries. And we put it all together and packaged it all up. And lo and behold, had a lot of interest. And then someone decided to buy it out, and that was it. And it was a cool experience. It was like, okay, I actually, where the mortgage business, I closed that down because I sold off some of the trailing book and all the other things like that. But whereas this was, I set something up from just a stupid idea, just out of, I wanted to feed myself biscuits and learn to bake bread, right? And evolve to, and pay my way through uni, right? So college, on the side, that evolved into, my kitchen or my lounge room with like massive tubs of biscuits, and packing the bags and stamping. And it was like a full operation, and I'm dragging in friends and family, and like, I need help. And, I went to the local church. They had a kitchen, that was a commercial kitchen they weren't using. I said, let me hire it off you, because I don't want to go and set up a whole kitchen. And, it was just,
That's awesome,
and it went to this thing, and then so then I just exited it out of that, and that was fun. And after that exit out, I was like, at the same time, because I was so involved in food and cooking, I moved back into cooking, but more into a management role, like a senior sort of executive role.
Right.
I was less on the tools, I was still on the tools, but more moving into the financial management of
Right.
kitchens. You know, managing millions of dollars of revenue and trying to keep the costs as low as possible. So that became the enjoyable transition away from. So yeah, so exiting out of that and moving back into the kitchen for a brief period till I sort of hit the ceiling and went enough. And that's where we sort of, I guess you could say, we move into
The work.
episode 3, where
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the natural one question I have, and this is perfect. We still have time. Do you have a hard stop, by the way? Um,
no,
okay. All right,
no.
good. Because I want to spend. I just still want to make sure we spend a good time on Web3. Fantastic journey so far. We've gone a lot of places. Uh, But I think this is the one question I wanna ask. I think it's natural, and I don't care if it's the tried and true a bajillion times that you've heard, perseverance, consistency over time, but you've witnessed a lot of different businesses. You're an entrepreneur yourself. Your personal top 2 to 3, success tips, or you're talking to a young entrepreneur, what are the things that they should concentrate on? What are the things or those words of advice you could give to them?
First thing is, I say, fine. You know, your idea. Don't just try the idea, right? Really try the idea. People would say to me, oh, you're crazy, this and that, and this is where it sort of transitions into, and I'll just sort of put the example where it's really relative, because I worked, I was cooking, and I reached, and I was about 40 years old, right? I was about to turn 40. I was in the kitchen, and I was like, I'm done. I've reached. Well, I was actually managing a hotel. I was the executive chef of a big hotel, had 60 odd staff under me, and I reached my position. I was like, I can only go laterally. I can't go up. And so I was like, I'm done. And that's when I started to look into, I need to learn something new, right? I'm like, I don't know how to trade stock. I always wanted to do that. And when I was living overseas, one of my friends took a hiatus break, and he was a trader, an institutional trader, dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars. And he just took a break and ended up taking a 2-year break, learned Spanish and traveled around, and now he's back doing his thing. And it's like amazing. And I'm like, I would love to do the psychology of doing that and learning about that. But so I let it go, and then I tried to roll into that. And that's when I sort of stepped into that space of, crypto and everything else like that. And we'll
Right.
touch on that in a minute. But the point I just want to answer to that question, and why it leads back into that, is because when I decided to do that, or think about doing that, everybody thought I was crazy. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was way off the thing. And even in the early days, my ideas were way out there, right? It's never been about the money. It's just about the challenge, and it's about helping people and becoming out. So when you ask that question about as young entrepreneurs, what I say to them is, what social impact does your project have? And not that you're trying to save the world and you're trying to save carbon emissions and all this other fancy stuff. It's like, does your product or does your solution have a benefit to a consumer? Does the
Yeah.
consumer actually need that? Worry about, spend more time, and I wish I did this in some of my other stuff too, spend more time finding out, what does the consumer want? You've got an idea, test it. And if the consumer doesn't want it, find out why they don't want it. Don't just close it off. Find out why they don't want it, because in that evolution of finding out why they don't want it, you can find out something else. You'll come up with a new solution. And there's plenty of projects that have done that. It's like Blue Tax, an example, 3M, the Post-it notes. They're trying to make the strongest sticking glue in history, and they come up with the Post-it note glue.
Right.
So they went from one extreme to the other. So I guess my point is, as a young entrepreneurs, don't give up in your ideas. But also too, if you come to a point where it's like you're seeing a brick wall, and one of our mentors, he's a professor in entrepreneurship, and he says there's 8 fatal flaws, and I can't remember them all, so he'll scold me for this later. But
Right.
if you fail at one of those, you've got no project. You got no business. You got nothing. That's it. There's 8 fatal flaws, and I'm happy. I'll find them out and I'll share them with you later.
Oh, dude, we're
But
gonna have to make a tweet about that. I'm holding you to that to share that out to me because I'm interested
yeah,
in that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So that
no, I think that's great advice. I like that because that you didn't go and it's fine if you do, but like be comfortable failing. That you hear these things on at nauseum. But this is why I do what I do. Like you talk about product market fit, right? I have the founders that come on this show are like this, we need this, especially in the Web3 space, right? But it was enjoyable and people like going through the process. So there is a product market fit there. But the other reason why I do it more than anything else is, and I think people don't talk about this enough, when you explain how entrepreneurship and your success principles impacted your life and your journey, that is going to resonate with someone else completely different than it will with me, right? And one of the times that we go through similar principles, right? I think a lot of things in life, a lot of them aren't rocket science, right? But for some odd reason, our brains trick ourselves into you can't do it, or it needs to be done a different way. But if you hear a story from a person like yourself, that maybe they are from Australia or they really believe in what you're saying, something can click, right? But it takes a lot of different people and a lot of different variants of a story for it to click with that person. And that's what I love that we do most here, is being able to tell these tried and true principles in different ways from different people. I think it's just really cool. And I love that you uh, gave your own unique answer. And I thought it was incredibly unique and fit right into the story that you've just gone through. And it's just been magical so far, man. Magical. So thank you for all your insight. Thank you for your feedback, and thank you for just your time and spilling out your life. I mean, not everybody loves to do this or can do it as fantastic as you've done. You've done an amazing job storytelling. I think storytelling is a huge skill set that people lack, and that is a critical skill set in the future. And I think people also make storytelling way too intricate, right? Storytelling is really just talking about your experiences in a conversational way. People need to think they need to write the next like Star Wars trilogy, and it's like that is not really storytelling, right? I mean, yes, it's storytelling, but it's not the effective storytelling that I think most people need to concentrate on.
yeah,
So thank you so much for all your thoughts, man. Uh, let's do this. Let's move this to the episode 3. You now know how these episodes are working. We're transitioning into 3. The juicy Web3 stuff. You can give us the short hitter of like how you're actually getting to it, how you transitioned into like interested in investing, any kind of early war stories of Web3, and then we can get into your current company and the current landscape of Web3 and what the future looks like for you.
yeah, absolutely. So again, transitioning on from that and just ending off the episode 2 and moving into episode 3 because it's important. I'm a Star Wars fan as well, so let's keep with the theme. The main point is that I reached my critical mass, and so I wanted to learn something new. And when you're jumping into something new, you've really got to spend some time and understand. And so I was alerted to obviously Bitcoin in the early days, and I'm like, I look, everybody's got those fun stories, I actually was about to buy a ton of it when it was at I think 1 or 2 cents or something, and I was working on a boat, and I was going to buy $1,500 worth, right? And anyway, the captain goes, "The owner wants you now." I'm like, I'm coming. Anyway, closed the laptop, moved on. Then, and this is something an important thread I want to really stress out. So came through years later. I watched a TV show. I can't remember what it was called, but and the story was like a detective or something else like that, or it was just solving like a Sherlock Holmes sort of thing. And he came through, and this jeweler shop got robbed. But the thing with this jewelry shop was the son had taken over and started taking payments in Bitcoin. And so the USB was stolen out of the vault, right? And so they called in this guy and come in. And so I started thinking, like, oh, Bitcoin, you start to think about Bitcoin, right? And this is in 2014 or something around there. And I just sort of brushed it off. I didn't think anything of it. And then later on, something else came up. And then all of a sudden I was bored one night and I was sitting there watching and I was like, oh, I'll watch a documentary. It's like something banking on Bitcoin or something. I can't remember. It was a really early one. And I looked it up and I watched it and it was really interesting. I said, oh, wow. And then I looked up the price of Bitcoin and it was like $900 US, Aussie, sorry, $900 Australian. It's probably about 500 US.
Wow.
And this is 2017, I think, or 2016. Or it was around 2016, right? And I didn't think anything of it. I just let it go, right? I was like, whatever, you know. And I mean, I should have bought back then. Anyway, long story short, my whole world changed. You know, my dad had passed away. I was living interstate. It was just a whole sort of world come crashing down. I'm about to turn 40. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done.
Right.
Sort of moment, you know, that sort of midlife crisis, you could sort of say. And I said, okay, I'm going to get into and I'm like, I'm going to get into this, right? And so I bought in, and I bought in at it was 2,300 or 2,400 US for a Bitcoin, right? And I put $500 in. I was like, I'm gonna put 500 and just test the market on this, right? I want to test this out. And I was like, cool, test this out. And I'm like, okay, this is awesome. And it's kept just going up and climbing. This is before the, you know, the 217, 18 pump, right? So I'm thinking, this is amazing. And but in that process, it took two things took to me. So first thing is the thread was all the way through, right? From way back, right? For years on, it keeps popping up. And this is going back to that early story we were talking about. Write your note down. If it's meant for you, it will come back to you. It will appear back to you and it will chase you. That idea will chase you back.
Right.
Don't ignore it. If I can tell you from experience, don't ignore it, because that ignoring it cost me a lot of money, because I could have bought in a lot earlier. Would have kept it or not, different story. Further on from that, I took this and I was like, okay, I'll put my $500 in. My next thing is, how do I keep my money safe? How do I get my money out? So this took me on a rabbit warren of looking up. I was like, security, crypto, security, blockchain security. How do I keep my money safe? I started asking these things and I started Googling YouTube videos as well. It's like, what mistakes did you make investing into crypto, rather than going, oh, how do I buy this stock and what's the best stock to buy? I was like, and I found one YouTuber that put on there and he shared his sentiment stories and stuff. And it was really cool. And he said, the main thing is, he goes, if I had my time again, I wouldn't have sold anything. I would have kept it and a bunch of other stuff. And as I started looking, as you search and you search these keywords, cybersecurity popped up. Cybersecurity and these keywords and all this sort of thing come up, and university degree for cybersecurity and all that. And then I started looking deeper, because I'm just one of those people. I'm an academic at heart. I like to dig deep and research. And I realized, and it said, I think there was a published paper by IBM, said by 2020, at the time, it feels like a lifetime ago now, cybersecurity is going to be the #1 industry in the world. And I said, well, I'm a chef. I don't really know how to do anything else. I mean, I've got other business and entrepreneurial ideas, but I really don't know how to do anything else. I don't have a proper skill set, anything to fall back on. And so I started looking into this and I said, okay, this aligns. I want to keep my money safe. And even in the early days when PayPal, I don't know if you remember PayPal in the early days, I was like, you put your money in, but you couldn't get your money out, right? And then they tried to issue their own card, the PayPal card and all this stuff. And I was like, nah, this is too close knit. I like to have, you know, an extra entry and exit. I like to know all my entry and exit points and stuff like that. And so this evolved through, and this is that. So when I went into there, you know, I jumped into crypto, fast forward like we all did, and you know, you throw money into, I'll put $50 into this and that, and then I started a bit more. I started with a small bank, just $2,500. I even bought a laptop. I've said, this is my total setup. If I lose all this, I don't care. It's fine. It's all experience for me. At the same time, I learned to do trading, like leverage trading and margin trading. I said, no, it's too risky and too volatile for me. I don't really care about floating lines and Fibonacci's, and that's not me.
I did the same thing, and I was like, well, 1, too risky, but 2, my brain just doesn't work that way.
Exactly. So I moved through, and I was like, okay, so we've got this thing here. So you're thinking, I've got the security licked, got this all covered. I've got this now. I know what to do. I've got my wallets and this and that. Anyway, I set up a MyEther wallet, right? In the early days, set up a MyEther wallet, set up with a JSON file, very old school, low tech. Actually found one of them recently, and I pulled it up, and there was some, ETH that I forgot about. So I moved it across now to my ledger. But the point is, I had one, and I invested into a stock, and I bought it at the day back then it was pumping. I was like, I bought it at $1. I saw some YouTuber, and I looked it up, and I thought, oh yeah, this is actually cool, and there's like this associated. And I got the JSON file, and then it came through with the JSON file and had the 3 private keys like that, and I thought, oh, that's fine, I've got the private key, but I didn't actually save the main private key. And we know what this happens, and I just went, and I'm sort of sitting there trying to go through, and I trying to think I'm Mr. Robot, and and hacking through it and working through. I'm like, no. And then I Googled it up, and it's like, no, if you've lost that, there's no way to retrieve it. Even from the JSON file, it's not happening. You got the 3 keys, and it's not, it's just no. And I let it go, and I watched it go from $1 the next day up to like $15, right? And I just and at that moment, and that, I mean, it's just to use the resilience, and I guess this ties back to also an entrepreneurial skill. Resilience is important. Persistence is key, but resilience is very important. And so, but you also got to know when to. It's the the song, know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Yeah.
Very much. It's very much that point. You need to go, I'm dusting this off. I'm writing this down as a bad experience, as a learning lesson. Put it to bed. And and as Benjamin Franklin said, the best return on your investment is in the form of education. So just write off experiences as education and just move on from them. So that happened, and I was like, damn. And that burnt me pretty quickly, but I got burnt fast. And so I rolled through. And then, a couple of others that you just got rugged on. There was some really slick setups, and like before rug was a thing, it's like this one, it's like put it in, at the time I think I threw in half a Bitcoin, thinking, oh, it's cool, and you're throwing Ethereum around like they're lollies because they're like only 200 US each.
Right.
It's like they're nothing, and then you go back, you're like, can I have all that back? Because that was a lot of.
I have made a lot of money, and I've lost all of it as well. I'm making money again, and I'll lose it again. Yeah, that's the reality, man.
Yeah, definitely. So forward thinking from that, I started to evolve into the space, and I was doing my degree cybersecurity, and I was at uni, and I was banging on about Bitcoin and the way it was moving, and we were going through. So we hit the peak. I cashed out at the top of 2018, and then I watched it retrace down, and I bought back in, and
nice.
but I bought in at like 10,000. So what about 8,000 US? But I'd set a market to say it was going to drop to 3,000 US, but it went to it did get to 3,000 US. But in Christmas of 2018, I bought back in like in 2018 February, March. So thinking I did really well. It's like, oh, it's peaked up here, and I bought it here. I've got it at a huge discount, right? Anyway, long story. I was like, I'm done. I put it in. I watched my portfolio go from like 6 figures down to below 5 figures for 3 years. And again, you write it down, you go, I'm in some big projects here, I'm just going to leave it alone. And you watch it, and you get really depressed about it and stuff. But what I started to do was evolve and look at what was happening around that. I looked at 2 things, right? I said, what are the projects that are actually profiting the most out of this, right? Unless you got into Bitcoin in the early days, right, in 2009, 2010, you're not really doing as well as everybody else. That's the first thing.
Right.
So the ones that were doing the most were the ones that were setting up exchanges. I remember when Binance came out, because before that I was using like Bittrex and the others, and you had to like have a magnifying glass to see the trading stock, and it was like impossible. Right. Binance comes out and changes the UI, UX, and makes it a little bit easier, a little bit more legible, a little bit more user-friendly. I thought, amazing. And it's like, great. And then I started to look at a bit more, and you assess, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm seeing people getting rugged and scammed and all this stuff. And then it was audits. Let's do audits. So I was, good at this stuff. So I started auditing smart contracts and getting into blockchain security. through my whole degree. I wrote papers about this. I published about this and did a lot of
Yeah.
research on it. And as I evolved and saw, I thought, and DeFi started to move through, and I thought, wait a minute, there was the meme going around, oh, you got an audit, but the contract still got drained for 150 million. Like,
Right.
really, it really done nothing. And so I said, oh, what about insurance?
Yeah.
And I wrote a paper on insurance for DeFi insurance, providing DeFi insurance. But when we started to pull it apart and look at it, I said it's too volatile, and no underwriter would actually take,
Right.
a transition to
It's a
that.
huge risk, right?
Huge risk, huge risk. So I wrote the paper, published it out there, put it on the shelf, watched a ton of people take up the same principle and doing it, which they're doing right now. And we can talk more about that in a minute. But it's just like, it fundamentally doesn't work as well as it should. So that was that, put that to the side. Moved on, worked for NAC, went overseas to Dubai, living in Italy, and working on this project, which was actually providing mental health therapy on demand. It was born out of COVID. So I was creating that, therapist on demand. At the time, it was a huge, huge, huge demand for it because we couldn't get into a therapist.
Right.
And at the same time, I read a paper and came up on my feed and said, oh, they've now taking NFTs and turning them, they're lending against them. I said, well, if you can collateralize an NFT, an asset, a digital asset, you can insure it.
Right.
So then that came back into that whole evolution, and it tied back around. And here we are. And while we're on the topic of it, I'm just going to run through with that there. So I guess this is a whole culmination of things, and we'll expand more on it. And is the name. The name's really important, and why I want to resonate with the name. The name's Qorra, but Qorra, when you pronounce it in Italian, it means quarter. It's heart, and for us, it's about keeping things close to your heart, safe. And when I watched hundreds of billions of dollars being bled out of the market, right, it broke my heart. I mean, I got rugged. Everybody's got rugged and pulled, just cleaned out, and it just broke my heart. And I thought, how do we make that safer? How do we help? How do we transition this through? Because, especially in the early days, it's like, why did the market collapse down? Because we didn't have enough institutional support. We didn't have enough real time, enough support. There was just this close-knit bunch of digital hippies that created this concept idea and think they're going to change the whole world. Well, you still got the rest of the world.
Isn't it ironic that the decentralization needs some centralization for it to work? It's all coming full circle. The problem is it's going to go the other direction, and it's going to be just as much as a cluster.
Yeah. So that's where it evolved, the name. But it's going back to, it's like that ethos where you had as a young kid going entrepreneurial. It's like, wait a minute, what is going to have the maximum effect? What's going to be beneficial, because it needs to, in business, you get in a business to make money, but also to be economically viable. That's the fundamentals, because otherwise you're not going to be able to do what you want to do and also help other people and evolve out. So there's this whole sort of thing, and you want to have fun along the way. But the main thing is, does it align with your ethos? Like, it could be, it's like, I'm not going to go open up a strip club, or I'm not going to go and open up a casino or something else like that, even though you're capable of doing it. But does it align with what's resonates with my heart? And then this is another lesson I give back to the entrepreneurs is, does it align with your vision in your heart? What's in your heart? What you're passionate about? If you're not passionate about it, don't enter into it. You could make money out of it. It could be lucrative at it, and there's plenty of things to do that are lucrative. But if you don't have a desired passion here, you will burn out. You will fizzle out. You'll get bored with it, and you'll move on. So
yeah. No, I love that. I think that's a fantastic tip as well. And you hear that a lot because, like you said, to resiliency, right? You can be resilient as a human, but when you're talking about resiliency in businesses that you're running, being an entrepreneur, doing something you enjoy helps you, because we all, some people don't learn it their entire lives. But religions are based on this. There's common thought out there that if you're just chasing the money and the profits, you will end up miserable, right? because there's no deeper meaning there. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, some people do it, I mean, and say that they're happy, but I we'll see at the end of days if that still holds the case. I firmly believe it doesn't. But yeah, no, those are all great points. So I love you explained why Quora, because it broke your heart to see billions just siphoned. That's how you name the company. One of the things I like to, as we get into now, we're talking about your company, elevator pitch, right? Give me 2 minutes max. If you could really boil it down, um, Cora being an insurance company, or maybe you're doing multiple things. Like, what are you ultimately doing with Cora?
Yeah, look, to put it simply, Qora's objective is about providing a safe, easy, and secure solution for users' digital assets and NFT blockchain space. And how we're able to do that is using clever technology and in traditional insurance solutions and bringing them together and making it a nice, easy bridge for Web 2 to Web 3 users in the digital space. That's
Love it.
that's our that's it. That's who we are, and we don't try to be anything different.
And I love that I ask this question every podcast, and I can tell based on how people respond to that, um, if they've really thoroughly thought about it because of your conciseness to your answer and how elegantly you can answer that, and you nailed it, top notch there. Same version for us. Like when we built a podcast, we didn't just build a podcast because people were building podcasts at the time. We built it because our mission statement, bringing back the lost art of genuine human connection, right? Like what we're doing here is you go on Twitter and there's conversation and shit all day long, but it's not this conversation, right? And this is critically important, especially in a space like this. So I love that you have that so concise. So let's expand upon that though, and really talk about, there's two things, and maybe answer it after. There's obviously competition. I've heard people, you've got the collaterals off NFTs now, insurance, being safe is a thing. So maybe that's the second part that you can answer, is like, what is this, what is the current ecosystem in your mind look like? But I would love, before we get there, to just talk about how your product works. Like, what are the things that you do to people that are paying for your goods? Is it looking at contracts? Is it how does it all work? I'm interested.
Yeah, so our primary thing is providing insurance. That's what we are. We're an insurance provider over digital assets. One of the fundamentals we do is, so we insure your individual NFT. You in our system, in our ecosystem, there we take. So there's different tiers for. So we have it. We take custody of your asset. We hold on to that. We provide you a clone of your original NFT. And that NFT is insured. So if you lose it, it's stolen, it's hacked, we replace that for you, right? If you want to sell it, you can transfer that NFT on. So your insurance transfers to the new owner, right? So that's our fundamentals there. In addition to that, right, and this is something that was sitting in beta for a long time, and a project that we're actually provided. It's called Metaverse Merchants. I believe you
Yep.
interviewed them as well. They're
Yep.
providing real world assets of whiskey, and so we've created this platform. It's called Rug Proof Certification, right? And it's been in beta for a while. And how it works is, we basically take the project over from the beginning. We look at it. They come to us and they're sort of saying it's like equivalent of getting that audit badge, but we do a thorough background check on the team, on the project, on the contract, the whole mechanics. And from the mint, we insure the asset from the mint, right? Self-custodial insurance up to the value of the mint price, right? So if the mint price is, say, 5 ETH, well, then we'll cover up to 5 ETH per NFT, and that's addressed with the owner of the developer of the team.
Right.
And so it's like saying, oh, we've got the audit badge, but extended on from that, what's the advantage of the rug proof certification and what we're doing? It's insured. The product is your project is insured. So if you do this and then all of a sudden the project rugs, right, you've got insurance to say that this is going to be paid out accordingly. So obviously we're very careful on who we partner with, right?
Right.
So we've got metaverse merchants. We've have a partnership announcement coming up with Oshi Gallery, which is a premium NFT gallery in Melbourne. Yep. So we're connecting with them, and so we're very careful who we're taking on because the liability association with this is quite high.
Yeah.
Now, further on from the mint, right? You've got the initial mint, and you've got your NFT coming. It's like you buy a good, and it comes with 12-month warranty or anything else like that. Well, the manufacturer or the developer that's minting this project covers that cost, that premium cost from it's built in, so it doesn't cost anything to you as a consumer buyer. Now you've got this thing, it's worth 5 ETH, all of a sudden it's now worth 25 ETH, right? And I know I'm talking big numbers, but I'm just using round numbers for easiness. To you've only got to cover for 5, but it's now worth 25. If you want to cover it for 25 ETH, you have to bring it over to our platform, right? So you bring it over to our platform, and obviously we got more accessibility over it. We look at it, and there's a whole process involved in that, and then we'll cover up to that 25 ETH. Your premium's increasing. Now, if your premium goes up, we'll adjust. We'll alert you to say, hey, your premium's gone. Your value's gone up. Do you want to increase your premium, or your premium, relative to down? So we have that sort of fluctuation point there. So in summary, our objective is to try and make your life as easy as possible and as secure as possible by making you feel safe. So when you're jumping into projects, I mean, I see it every day, and I'm sure we all see it every day. You jump onto Twitter and you see, damn, I just got rugged. I got rugged left, right, and center. It's almost like sport now. So we've created this solution where it's that rug-proof certification, where we want to create that badge of authenticity. It's like not just I got an audit. It's like where the audit's even insured. Sort of taking that through, just sort of saying the audit's insured as well.
Yeah. No, I love that. And so, to clarify, you use the example 5 ETH to 25 ETH, right? And I get it insured at 25 ETH. Market fluctuations, you're not paying anything out. You're securing the 25 ETH if it gets stolen. Is that the case? Like, what are the terms there? I'm interested in how that works.
Yep. So the terms are, obviously, without getting the actuary and our chief insurance officer talking more
you
about
don't have to go down there, but in general, right?
In general, it's basically the price. So it's like, you've taken an agreed value price, or we've taken it on the market value price based on AI algorithm, taking in wash trading and stuff like that. We do not cover market fluctuations to say, oh, I got insured for 25 ETH, and now it's dropped to 10 ETH, and I want to, cover that loss, that shortfall loss. That's not us. That's hedge trading. We don't,
right?
Yeah, that's not our business. But in that, so if we're saying it's gone up to 25 ETH, the algorithm will calculate the probability it's actually worth 25 ETH, or if it's gone from 5 to 25 ETH, but what's the probability of it shifting back and forth and down? And this is where it comes in the space to say, it might say, look, really, the floor price is only 7 ETH or 8 ETH. Like, so perfect example, I had this with GT from Oshi, right? He's like got an original 1-of-1 X copy, right? And it's worth, I don't know, let's say it's worth probably about 30, 40 ETH, maybe even 50 ETH, right? But the floor price is listing it at across the whole collection of 1 ETH, right? So it's right, but it's not worth 1 ETH because it's a 1-of-1, and it's a rare print or rare design. So that changed the narrative. So then we got to allow the space to say, I want to have an agreed value, to say, this is what it is. I want to insure it for this amount of money. And we go, yep, no worries. We look at it, we verify it. Yep, it's okay. We understand the market, we understand everything else like that. Obviously, special consideration, we'll cover it to that price.
Right.
And we'll cover to that, then we'll insure against that.
Right. So, but then insurance covers what, I think, is my question. In traditional insurance, if I get in an accident, it's covered, right? And then there's different levels of like bodily injury, covering the car. What does that coverage look like in scenarios of what do you cover? I think is the next question.
Yep. So that's a great question. It covers the loss, hacking, or loss, theft, hacking, and you lost your keys, right? So you can't get into your wallet, right? It's like, okay, so there's account abstraction, there's opportunities, there's options there and stuff like that we look at. And so it covers against those sort of incidentals and stuff. Now, to go, oh, I just, obviously there's a level of due diligence and stuff in there. So there is conditionals in there. But yeah, the main fundamentals of coppers right now, our thing is about lost, stolen. You can't say damage because it's a digital asset, but
Right.
let's call within those fine thing there. But it's mainly about lost and stolen and that hacked. I got hacked. I got whatever. It moves across from there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I like that. And so, but I'm interested in that. That's the last thing. So we have same thing in traditional insurance. I actually work for a traditional insurance company. We have full blown investigative units, right? Like, and there are flags when people either have previous history or there's certain types of accidents that are. I mean, there's places in, for instance, in Florida. Uh, there's a couple laws that require a minimum amount of personal bodily injury to be paid out, right? No matter what the incident. And there are whole generations of families that have scammed the system and make a lot of money, right? They'll purposely go onto a highway, slam on their brakes, get hit from the back. They're in the bed with a doctor, a lawyer, and it's a whole cyclical thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think my question then is, what is your uh, rigor around a lost key, right? Like anybody can say that. I'm interested in that process.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's further defining that there, because it's like exactly what you're saying there. So we employ loss adjusters, right? So we have our chief security officer, we have our actuary, we have our insurance officer. So really pulling this together and then bringing in that and looking through in the metrics and saying, okay, what was happening beforehand? And this is the beauty of blockchain, right? It's kind of saying, okay, you use this wallet and you were on this platform here, you were trading over here, you're doing this and that, and creating this whole sort of psychological profiling, right? Using our algorithm, our AI algorithms and stuff that we put together to saying, wait a minute, this is a due diligence thing, or this is just intentional, or and digging further deeper into that. And like any insurance claim, you've got to ask those sort of questions and
Right.
deepening through. And when it comes to things particulars like, oh, I just lost the key and I want to claim out, well, that's
Right.
fine. And so in that process, so it's like, okay, we'll look at that and we'll go, yes. The added advantage or the added security for us and the way we're able to pacify our underwriters is that we actually have the original sitting in our vault and you've got the clone, right? So you need the clone to access the original, but there's also a series of additional steps. So in the initial part,
Ah,
you say, wait a minute, I lost my keys. Okay, cool. Let's have a look at it. Is a legitimate claim. Great. We'll process the claim. So it's a legitimate claim. We'll process the claim out. No worries, cool. We'll provide you the new one. We'll burn the old one, and we've got the new one there, right? So now the new one is whitelisted. The address, the cryptographic signature is secured, and the old one is terminated, and it's blacklisted across the market and everywhere else to look at and see that.
yeah.
Now, further to that, you actually have to have, your wallet. The wallet's connected too. So there's a whole, like, without getting too technical and explaining the whole mechanics of, the secret sauce, so to speak, right? There is a process involved in that to make sure that there is enough mitigation in this early stages of what we're doing, because we are actually entering into a space that is quite
Yes.
volatile,
Yeah.
very rife, and we're not stupid. We've gone in there with our eyes wide open, right?
Right.
So we're still action to being, we want to be profitable. That's our fundamentals, like that, to be a profitable operational business. But at the same time, that we are protecting ourselves, because if we're paying out more premiums than more claims than we are collecting premiums, then it's not viable, is it? It's not a
Right.
viable
Right.
situation. So we need to have enough check balances in place until the market matures enough to allow for that transitional sort of space.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And so I think when it comes, we've been talking for an hour and 43 minutes, believe it or not. It's
Wow.
been a fascinating conversation. There's actually a question from the audience, and you can answer this however you want. Um, they really make the comment of like insurance and let's say lending protocols have collapsed I don't even know if that's true. That's what the comment has said. I know the lending protocols obviously hit a wall during the bear market, right? Like there's, you're not it's a difficult business to be when people aren't making money. Um,
Mm.
and then that is also then followed up about like how do you look at profitability? When do you think you'll achieve profitability? How do you get to profitability? Is it X amount of customers? Does it work like in typical insurance where you're sitting on reserves and you're investing those reserves to make additional money? So it's kind of a twofold question there. Has the market collapsed? Is it thriving? And then two, how do you look at achieving profitability?
Yeah. So that's an excellent question. So first question, I'll answer the market. The market had collapsed, and it was we built in the bear market. We've been at this for 18 months, getting our licensing, our ISO certifications, making sure everything's right, and even grinding through and sort of reaching out to the market. Like we were going to launch our token earlier, but we held off doing that. Testing the market again, sort of thing like that, because it wasn't enough there. So the market sentiment has improved and moved. But further than the market sentiment moving to saying, okay, the floor price of an NFT's gone up and all this particular and stuff like that, and even the wording NFT, I read an article that you might appreciate that it was about changing the naming or rebranding the name of
Oh
NFTs
yeah.
to something else. It was really interesting. It was a Forbes article. I thought it was really interesting. But the point is, we're moving beyond digital cartoons and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So this is a thing. So the market sentiment has increased, as we can see. Like Bored Apes gone up, Pudge Penguins, all these others have gone up. That they're blowing up. But what's really evolving is tokenized real world assets, right? So we've moved beyond, and our objective is about ensuring a tokenized asset. So it's like I used the example at a party on the weekend on Sunday, and it's sort of like you got this cup, right? And the cup entitles you to X amount of drinks, right? And in the digital space. Now, if you lose that cup, you don't get any drinks. We insure that cup,
Yeah.
right? That's our thing. We insure that cup. So that cup could be a digital artwork, which is Ocean Gallery. That's an avenue of customer base there, right? Or it could be metaverse merchants, where it's actually a real world asset, or it
Yeah.
could be real estate, or it could be something else. For us, it's that certificate of entitlement to say this is actual legitimate and this is true, and this entitles me to say this is a legitimate watch, this is a legitimate house, this is legitimate blah blah blah, or this is my claim chip. We're insuring over that. So that's the first thing there. So as far as that, there we don't see the market shifting up or down. Initially, we were looking just to say if we're purely focused on just digital artwork NFTs, then it would be a problem. But the fact that we are looking beyond that whole scope and looking at the broader market, and we saw this early coming, saying we need to pivot away from that, and rather than just being digital NFTs, we need to look at just tokenized things, and NFTs have a larger use case. So that's the first thing. As
Yeah.
far as the profitability and moving through from that, and how do we work? Well, the answer to the first part is, we take premiums, we sit on reserve, and yes, we reinvest those back, and we use those reserves and reinvesting back into the business. But also too is to further incentivize the consumers. Part of our token, which we're about to launch now, is that there is a vesting period, because we don't want to dump the market with your tokens coming on, but to incentivize as well that vested tokens are sitting there in a staking pool. So there's, even though it's vested over a period, you actually earning rewards from the premiums that are generated, right? So of the premiums have generated, there will be goes back into the pool, and then that'll pay back out as well as an incentivized premium coming through. So we are moving through that sort of versus going just purely, or we're turning our premiums and turning into investment space, right? Like that, and reinvesting it back in, yes, which is important. Like we want to invest further into other R&Ds, make further acquisitions, grow our marketing, and really help to expand the space and educate the space a lot better.
Right.
But beyond that, there. So that's that first thing there, or that's the profitability or our investment. And now the profitability thing, the way we have set it up from the start is to be profitable at a very early stage, right? So our premiums are reflective to our margins, right? So we have enough there that we're constantly being profitable. So we're not running at a loss for very long.
Right.
We've managed to be able to achieve a lot with a less, so that we can scale further later.
Right.
So yeah, that's our main thing. So collectively, we're about being, you know, a profitable operation, a profit making business, not being a hamster in the VC wheel, so to speak. I mean, right
Yeah.
now we're self funding, you know, paying for everything ourselves. You know, the term was bootstrapping, but you know, it's just sort of putting that all together. But that's okay. We have that, and we have revenue, and we have businesses. We're taking on weight and insurance, weight and stuff with other projects.
Yeah.
Addition on of our, you know, extending out our capacity and stuff. So the token we're issuing out and touching on that is not so much. It's not about using to pay for the project's development. It's the utility of the token. It's the token to be used within the ecosystem, and using that ecosystem and paying for premiums at a discount, but also too then earning from that token that you're paying for premiums and then it's keeping. It's recycling back through. Again, it's creating this convenient ecosystem that is beneficial to everybody. You know,
Right.
so
So
we're earning.
the token can act as a way to pay for the product, but also create products because you're doing. Am I understanding that holding that token will give you access to some sort of rev share as well? Or
Yeah, so holding that token in the ICO stage. So if you're jumping in at the ICO stage, right, you'll be able to. So you'll have a vesting period, right? So we're running 5-tiered rounds. So the first round, you know, you've got a vesting period of 18 months, right? And of that 18 months, right, after 6 months, you'll start to collect a rev share of the premiums that are generated,
right,
right, coming through. And
right,
so that'll be funneled back through, and you'll get paid out in, you know, in Qorra tokens. So you're earning Qorra tokens. So you can almost say it's like a quasi DeFi protocol, but
right,
it's just
right.
what I was saying is, like, the reason being, the logic behind this is there's nothing worse, in my opinion, is when you buy into a project and you've got vested tokens that I can't do anything with. They're just sitting there, and it's a pain in the
100%.
ass, but I can watch it going up, right? So that's the first thing. It's like, okay, how do we make this more friendly to the community? Right? They're
Yeah.
supporting us. They're supporting the project. Majority of the funds are going into the liquidity pool anyway, so it's going to be sitting there. So we have a stronger liquidity on the market. That's first thing, right? Cool. Second thing is, we want to be able to incentivize them to say, hey, you're actually a part of this. This is not just you or me. This is about bigger than that. This is about the whole ecosystem. So helping doing that is saying, hey, we're going to help you and give you a bit of a profit share in this ecosystem as well, of the revenue, the premiums that we're generating. Why? Because then it further incentivizes you along to say, oh, okay, great, I'm a part of this. I'm part of something bigger than myself. And for me, it's about family. Qorra, it's, you know, the family. You know, and I call everybody that's a part of this is family. And the other part is the token that's sitting there. So you've got the locked vested token. In addition to the locked vested token, we've created a wrapped version. So it's the wrapped core token. You can't trade that token, but you can use that wrapped token to pay for your premiums within the Qorra ecosystem. So it still has utility, even though you've got it locked away. I want to be able to give you that ability to use that token and also earn a revenue share from it at the same time. So
Right.
really, really saying, hey, you know what? We're not just about trying to, you know, insurance is boring, and insurance, yes, is lucrative, and it's all good and well, right? But at the same time, it's like, hey, let's change the narrative.
Yeah.
Let's take a bit of that Web3 ecosystem, you know, that community focused avenue in here, and saying, how do we have that nice blend between a profitable business, right, that's
Right.
operational, but also is giving back, rather than you just taking the tokens and flipping them on the market and back and forth and stuff like that. It's like,
Right.
use your tokens to pay for your premium, but also every time you're paying for your premium, you're getting a discount, but you're also, you know, helping and
Put
you're
money back
promoting the
in your
project.
pocket. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No.
yeah,
No. That's
exactly.
it's fantastic, and I think that's the natural next question, and then we can start winding it down a little bit and talking about what does the next 6 to 12 months look like. Um, what what do you think? And I'm interested, man, 2 to 3 things, and I think you just mentioned some, right? Like getting community involvement. I really think the biggest innovation in all of this is, yeah, there's decentralization, and we've got blockchains and we're attaching assets and stuff to it. That's great. But it's really like brand 3.0, right? It's a brand new way to engage a consumer. And you're thinking about that, which makes me excited and interesting. We even this goes all the way back to you being so impacted by Coca-Cola and what a brand can do, right? And there's a huge opportunity there. Other than brand and engaging community and like you said, tokenization, is there any other things that excite you about having insurance product in the Web3 ecosystem?
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that excite me because I'm moving forward thinking ahead, right? It's like okay, so projects, there's going to be people hustling through, right? So that's there. So that's the first thing. So having insurance protection over, it's like inherently we just need that protection security. So having insurance to say, oh, cool, I'm a noob, right? I'm coming from Web 2 and I'm going to jump in this space and buy some crypto, but I'm scared, right? But all of
Right.
a sudden I'm like, oh, wait a minute, there's someone going to hold my hand and give me a cuddle just in case something goes wrong, right? And
Right.
that's Qorra giving me that insurance cuddle, right? As a
Right.
family member, that makes me feel really safe to say, oh, there's insurance protection over that. That's the first thing. The
Right.
second thing is I think about video games, right? Video games is huge. This is a
Right.
massive space where I see the evolution on. My son sits there, plays Roblox left, right, and center. You know, he wants me to get the new morph, the Skibbity verse. He's only 6. You know, it's like it was turning
Yep.
7. It's like, you know, you're just gonna have to wait, right? Like, because you have to be good and you earn some Robux. But the point is, and I explained to him yesterday, and this is a really important lesson I learned in the early days, and this is something even you know, John Wesley, that created the Methodist Church, he had a thing. He used to share his sermons to his staff, and if they couldn't understand what he was saying, then it was too complicated. So I
Right.
used the complicated. I used this thing. I said to my son, I said, you know what, Mummy and I are building. And he said, well, no, not really. I know you got a business. And I said, well, you know, you're accumulating all these Robux. And I said, what do you do with these Robux? He goes, oh, well, I buy stuff. I buy all these morphs and there's
Right.
game passes and stuff like that. And I said, now what happens if somebody, a hacker came along and took all those things away from you? He said, oh, that'd be devastating. I said,
Yeah.
well, what if there was insurance to protect against that? So if you did lose that, you can get some of that back, or we can get money back for that. He said, that would be amazing. I said, well, that's what we do. He said, that's amazing. I understand. So if something happens to my assets, I'll get my money back, I'll get my assets back. So I still feel safe, like that cuddle. I said, yes, that's exactly what we do. And
That's
so
all.
that really excites me that we actually have that coming into the space. We're bringing that into the space. That's the second thing. The
Yeah.
third thing is, and collectively across the board, right? I think it just makes the holistic space safer and more secure. And again, like I keep reiterating on about how the rug proof certification. It's like I'm not just jumping into a project blindly. I drink a lot of wine, right? I'm a fan of the. I call it the. Someone said, "Oh, you drink, you know, you're a wine aficionado." I said, "No, no, no. I'm an avid student of the fermented grape."
I agree. Absolutely. I live in San Diego, which is craft beer mecca, so I like both. Um, and then obviously Napa Valley isn't too far away, but Australia has amazing wines as well.
Yeah, yeah, there's some good stuff. But you know, European ones, you might see the thing. It's got the little DOC and
Yeah,
DOCP,
yeah,
right? The
yeah.
DOCP. So we're trying to bring this into the space where it's more just about, like, we've created this whole thing, rug proof certification, but it's creating an association and creating a bounty program, a bounty association that's bigger than us, a DAO that we're helped to set up and help to fund, but it's supporting that. And Qorra is one of the companies that are providing that rug proof certification. There might be others. There might be Certic. There might be Hacken. There might be others. Who knows? Whatever it is. But
Right.
partnering with those organizations to saying, hey, you're providing an audit, but is that audit insured? Right?
100%.
We provide that insurance over. We want to provide that insurance over that audit. Right now, it's like we're one of those providers that are providing that rug proof certification. So for me, like when my wife's sitting there going, "Oh, babe, what about this project?" and blah 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 blah, you know, and it's like, okay, let's have a look and let's see what they're doing and blah blah blah, and checking all that background. It's like, but from the initial get go, I look and it's like, yep, it's got the little green tick, it's got the it's got the Core
Yeah.
certified
Yeah.
badge, and then rug proof bang, it's good. It's look, I don't need to look any further. I'm
Right.
comfortable with that. And so for
Yep.
me, that really makes me feel safe and excited about that potential. And yes, we're spearheading that, but I think it's bigger than that. It's a bigger collective, because when the people are sitting on the sidelines, all the people that are sitting on the sidelines going, oh, crypto is very risky, it's very volatile, there's a lot of scams and stuff like that, you know, and blah, 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 I'm not sure. It's like, can we provide a little bit more safer space with our insurance protection over that? I feel really cool about that. I feel really
Yeah.
excited about that, because we're about, you know, it's like, you know, Coinbase and everybody else is about, how do we onboard the next 1 billion users to Web3? Well, this is what I feel like our contribution
Oh,
is doing to that, and
100%.
what insurance is bringing to that space.
Yeah, and this is why, we set up the podcast the way we do, is because now I have reference about, 1, you know what you're talking about. 2, you're building a good product. You had immediate sound answers to every question that was asked. But 3, I know that you're doing it because you've quit multiple companies because your passion wasn't in it and it wasn't truly benefiting the consumer. And I love how you describe it to your son that you're giving happy little hugs in addition to insurance. I mean, like, that's such a great, that should be one of your campaigns. And we're going to have to build that together, you know? It's the happy hug of Web3. You're the happy hub of Web3. Like, that is a brilliant campaign right there. No, that's fantastic. So one question, and then I promise we will wind it down. I will, because my wife's gonna kill me. I have a 6-month-old, and she's like, "Why the hell is he not done taking care of the 6-month-old and relieving me?" Um, but there was another good question from the same person, actually. So there's a lot of these companies authenticating real world luxury assets. Let's say it's a Rolex, a painting, they're tokenizing all of that. Are you is that one of your target markets then, to because they're tokenizing it, proving the authenticity, but they're not insuring it. So I'm assuming that might be an opportunity for you. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely one of the things, and that ties back to the real world assets.
Yeah.
Sort of categorization. There is like Breitling, Rolex, a few others are now issuing out an NFT, or an NFT associated to the watch, to say this is authentic. We're working on another project to do with wine as well, like wine provenance,
Nice.
just saying that it's authentic and stuff like that.
Yep.
But again, it's like it's easy enough to I can't remember the name of it. Like my brother-in-law buys runners, right? Like buys these sneakers, like $2,000-3,000 sneakers,
Right.
and then he's saying as certificate of authenticity goes, but then he showed me on Temu he can go and buy that same tag for $50 and put it on the runners, and then it's saying it's a scanned one, right? So
Yeah.
so yes, so definitely providing that, to saying this is a legitimate NFT or certification from this organization, right? And it is covered under the Qorra
Right.
certification, rug proof certification, insurance and wrapping thing, is definitely under our thing. And again, I tie that back to the real world assets,
Right. Right. Yeah.
capitalization, revenue stream thing. And then that just also too, just from a profitability thing, tying that back, it makes us immune to whether the market's bull or bear, because people are still buying luxury good products. They still want to
Uh,
know that it's legitimate, right? There's so many scams out there. There's so many fake products. So yes, we definitely want to make sure that, again, it's an additional layer. You're saying, I'm going to give you the NFT or the certification, but on top of that, it's actually got the insurance, the core insurance on it. So yeah, that's definitely one of our fundamentals.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that makes total sense. I actually am having this. I don't know if you've heard of a company called The Forge. They're coming on, but they're specializing in tokenizing real world assets. We're going to have to link you guys up because I think it'll be a good match made in heaven. My Rolodex is always open to you. So awesome. So I think let's talk about what the next 6 to 12 months is. I actually have one more question. It's a softball, but I ask it at the end every time, and then we'll wind down. So 6 to 12 months. One of the other questions that just came in, which I think you can talk about, is you've captivated some of the audience. You're a smart guy. You've put a good narrative out there. As you talk about the 6 to 12 months, how can people get involved with the company because they like what you're doing? So have at it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, getting involved with the company is the first part is, if you're a project and you've actually got an NFT collection, or you're dropping a project or something else like that, come and talk to us, email us, contact me. I'm open to discuss it, look at it. And you want to, basically take on the rug proof certification. It's quite rigorous, the process. Someone asked me what's involved to it. Like, I call it this way: it's like, think of going listing an IPO, right? It's the same thing. And the reason for that is we are working closely with the regulators to providing that option where unregistered securities become registered securities, and we're taking that leg guesswork out for them. So providing that insurance over, because their objective is to make sure your assets, well, basically the consumer doesn't get ripped off, right? So that's the fundamental. So it's quite rigorous there. The other part is, if you want to get involved, is we're about to launch our token sale. Go onto our website. We've just updated the token sale page there, a bit more information, detailed the white paper, have a read through the white paper and our tokenomics, very transparent and everything. The team is fully doxed. We're a very, very experienced, mature team. So that's another way, obviously, getting involved with the project. We will be looking to move through. So we're going through those 5 iterative rounds. I won't talk too much about the token sale, but you can read through all the particulars. And again, if you've got more questions, please reach out to me on Twitter or X there. Sometimes I jump on the Qorra platform or my personal one. So I'm very open, happy to communicate through. So 6 to 12 months, where are we going? So we're going to be launching our token sale. We're planning to get it launched by the 16th of March. We're just getting our final audits done and making sure the contract's all safe and secure and everything's right. And then we're going to go through, we've got 5 rounds. So we'll have pre-seed, seed, pre-sale, public sale, and then the launchpad. The public sale and the launchpad will be done on launchpads. So then we put that out there. Again, majority of the funds are going towards the liquidity pool. About 80%, I think, we've allocated to the liquidity pool, because it's not about us trying to make money out of this. It's about actually getting the product out there, getting the market out there, getting the token out there, and evolving this further through. Further to that, as we expand, we're going through right now. We actually have underwriters, but we're looking to move through to the iterative stages, becoming an MGA, managed general agency, and then eventually becoming our own licensed insurance company, depending on the spacing and stuff, and a couple other projects that we're looking to move through. Longer term objectives beyond that is potentially looking at the option of, going through to a Series B, and then, or even Series A, Series B, and then potentially listing, on the exchange, external from the token market, listing onto, the stock market, so that there is those bigger options, and, expand the team out, but mainly beyond the broader, visionary of where we want to be. We want to be a global enterprise. We want to be the number one in the space. We want to be the Google or the Uber or the Facebook of insurance offering in the digital space. Now, yes, there are competitors out there. There are people doing it out there. But we're taking a traditional model versus saying, hey, we're going to use the DeFi protocol and providing capacity. No, not about that. So, look, there's a lot of ambitious ideas and stuff, but we are constantly iterating, and we want to make the space more enjoyable, more fun, more secure, and just establishing a lot more strong partnerships with the nifty portals, with the the open seas, the blurs, all those ones there. They're even, but from the inception stage, and this is something we've got with Oshi Galleries. So they've got the Oshi ID platform, where artists are coming in, and you click in, and it's like, I want to drop do a collection, and bang, you click the button. It's like, I want to have Qorra Rug Crew certification on there as well. That sort of pipeline straight through from the early stages, because if they're on the Oshi Gallery platform, we're happy with them. They'll go through our little checklist and going through there. So it's external from the growth point is really that partnership space, is really establishing a lot of partnerships. But tying it all back is just getting involved in the
And I love how and it can be true, like, right. So I ran brand marketing for even though you're not in the States, you've probably heard of this huge car insurance company, Geico, in United States, and I did their advertising, right? And they made insurance fun because of their advertising, in the sense of they created humor and entertainment out of basically a commodity, insurance, right? You actually have the opportunity, using blockchain, Web3, the evolution, to actually have actual fun with your consumer, which is really cool, and is a huge opportunity. And if you do it right, it will fundamentally change how people look at insurance, which is really, really cool. So this was, man, it was an amazing conversation. I have one more question, and then I'll ask you the question. I'll do my closing comments. I will, when I hit end stream and say goodbye, it should end the stream, but we'll probably stay in this virtual chat room. So, like, don't hang up right away. Just want to, like, have a quick follow up, and then we'll go from there, man. So, last question. I'm assuming you have listened into, been a part of Twitter Spaces. You've listened to podcasts. maybe been part of podcasts, critical, like honest opinion. How do you think your time on midlife crisis went compared to the other things you've seen or been a part of?
Yeah, look, I've been, you're right, I've been a part of a lot of podcasts and a lot of interviews and a lot of and things like this. I think the engagement and the way we've iterated through from the beginning and taken that journey through and created a narrative story has just been amazing. It's really engaging for me as a communicator on both sides. It's really important because even people that aren't sort of so comfortable with communicating, I think it gives you the space to evolve through, and the way you've handled it is really, really cool and really enjoyable. And it's helping to understand the message a lot clearer and sharing that through. And I've just enjoyed it. And even the questions that are coming through, I know they're fielding questions back and forth and the consumer engagement, I think is really important, really exciting. And I think it's a really enriching podcast. And that's what really drew me to when I watched the one you did with Grant from Metaverse Merchants and a couple
Yeah.
others. And I thought to myself, I really enjoy your temperature and the way you're communicating and talking through. It's not just asking questions for the sake of asking questions.
Yeah.
It's you are genuinely interested, and I love the fact that you take the interest in the projects that you want to talk to, because you want to learn more, and also too you're learning more to share it with everybody else. You're not just taking that information and close knitting it. You're saying, hey, here it is. This is the information I'm getting, and it's open forum. So I've really enjoyed being on this space. It's been really fun and really enjoyable. And to everybody listening as well, I've been loving sharing and talking more about Qorra, and yeah, it's been amazing.
Thanks, man. I mean, that warms my heart, man. That's exactly what we're going for. And I think you said it best. And again, I think we've talked about this throughout, even in entrepreneurship. I think um, there's some really simple principles to running like in what I think is a good podcast. I think we have one of the betters in the space. And it's just because it's a simple, and it's even with relationships, right? It's just genuinely listening. And I don't want to do much talking at all. And then if I'm listening and processing the things that you're saying, I can ask intelligent questions based off that. So the fact that you heard that and felt that is awesome. So that means the world to me. I'll say my closing comments and then we'll call it a day. It is 2 hours and 11 minutes we've been talking. A couple things that struck me. One, you're an awesome storyteller. The way that you went through the childhood all the way, because we started like when we started, you kind of jumped ahead over the family thing, but then we were able to bring it back to like you witnessing your family during Christmas and how that molded your mindset. And then it was so enjoyable for me to see how many just different ways you went. You thought I thought you're going to be a photographer, and then you took me back to chef. I mean, remember talking about you, talking with you that you were going to be a chef, but I kind of forgot it until you brought it back up. So that journey is just amazing. And I hope, again, people that watch this, you touch on something that can resonate with them, that can help honestly change their life or maybe change the course of their trajectory. Two, you're an insanely intelligent guy. And it's not that it's like, I think intelligence in itself gets misconstrued sometimes. Like, oh, that guy's just super book smart, right? I say intelligent in the way that I can see you're emotionally intelligent, but you're intelligent because you're curious, right? And I just loved hearing how you were just curious and just trying to figure things out, right? And it was admirable. I was actually thinking to this that you went from like a chef to like a hardcore insurance, like IT cyber security person. Like that's a big change. And it takes a certain type of person to be able to shift your mind like that. So bravo to you. And then three, I mean, I think you obviously have thoroughly thought out the business. I can see that you're passionate about it, what I think for the right reasons. And I can't wait to be a part of the ecosystem. And I can't wait to continue to grow. And you are always willing to come back. Like we literally could just do a 30-minute call. You're like, hey, Mike, I want to actually really get the message out about how critical real world assets and tokenization are. Dude, we can record for 30 minutes and now we have some marketing content. And then finally, I hope you feel the same way, but I genuinely feel like this, like friend, we've made a friend for life. This is the beginning of a friendship. And I cannot wait to just can keep on communicating and growing together, man. That means the world to me. Time is by far, especially someone like you, the most valuable thing you have. And you just spent 2 hours and 15 minutes with me. So that's actually the biggest um, compliment to me, that you're still here and doing that. So thank you so much, man.
You're welcome. You're welcome, and I appreciate all the words you've said, and it's really encouraging and really refreshing. And you're right, yeah, it's like it's not just friends, it's family. You know, you're family to me now, and everybody that's joined this community and listening in and engaging or asking questions and wants to know more about and helping, and we have other focus groups out there, and helping out, and it's just about it's family, and I really reiterate that. And then maybe it's just the Italian roots in me. It's about that sort of sitting around the table and family, and we're all coming together, but we are family. And even the board that's together, they're all C-level executives, but we've got this culture of thing. It's the family. I don't refer to them as the board. I refer to them as the family.
I love
We're
it,
all
man.
family, and you're all part of the family. And so you're right. Yes, this is a lifelong family friendship and relationship. And so yeah, I
I'm so
thank you
glad
very
you
much.
said yeah, oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you said that because when I was managing brand at Geico and, you have hundreds of millions of dollars as your budget and you work with these agencies and you got, horrible stories of like Apple, right? Or some tech company, like the agency and the directors they literally had a tunnel between, they would call it like the client tent, right? And then there would be the directors and the production agency's tent. And they would build a tunnel in between tents because they were like too good to hang out. And they would like literally like have a courier to go have a conversation because they just thought they were that elite. And I blew everybody away because I would call the head creative director like he was my granddad, and my counterparts were my sisters and my brothers, and that family mindset resonates so much. So I'm glad that you brought that up. It's critical. The world needs more of it, especially this space, right? It's a lot of fake facade stuff, but these deep, genuine conversations really matter to the world to me, and I think the space needs more of it. So thank you for taking the time. And with that being said, people, the midlife crisis show is winding down. Qorra, Adam, insane, amazing conversation. Cannot wait to get this up archived on the web so anybody can watch it. And we'll be cutting plenty of content from this podcast. So we have more marketing material and spread the word of you, honestly, as an amazing human and now part of the family with Midlife and Qorra. Thank you all. We'll talk to you later. Midlife crisis is out.